Join me. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start off today with our county engineer. You ready, Pat, to be the first out of the gate? I'm glad you got the memo on August no tie. Yeah.
That's my preferred business casual, yes. Oh, I wasn't got it. Okay.
You can use this pen.
Yeah. Well, good morning.
Morning.
It's always great to be here talking about the roads and bridges of Clermont County, the infrastructure. So, pastor's comments about patience. There's a lot of orange barrels and a lot of detours out there, so he's spot on there. I guess first of all, I just would like to start by saying that personally, it's been an honor and privilege to serve as the engineer for the last 14 years. We've been able to accomplish a great many things, and we still have a lot to do. Professionally, it's been more than I could ever ask for. Personally, it's just been a blessing. So none of this could, of course, have happened without the cooperation that we see specifically with the Board of County Commissioners. But throughout the county, I think our coordination and cooperation is the envy of many a county. So just something that probably isn't said enough, but certainly needs to be acknowledged at a time like today, where we're presenting, the status of our infrastructure and our planning and all of our efforts, both in the past, last year, and then moving forward into the future and what our plans are. So I guess first and foremost, the look and the feel of the report that you have in front of you, the revised report, is a little different than what was presented officially per the ORC back in March. We've had an opportunity to kind of update the annual report and make it a little bit more comprehensive in the sense that we talk a little bit maybe about our finances, where our expenses, where our revenues come from specifically, and where those revenues or where the expenses are made, and how we leverage our local dollars, and just basically kind of work you through in a relatively short period of time. I think Bob asked me how long I was going to be here, and I said 2 to 3 hours probably would get it covered, but we'll try to work through it a little quicker than that. So again, we wanted to sort of put this booklet or the annual report in more of a user-friendly. It's got a lot of data in it that's summarized. A lot of the full reports of inventory. We have 160 different county roads, 400 different bridges, 2,000 culverts. So all those are identified. We have them on lists. So should someone be interested in those inventory in those detailed lists, we have those available. A lot of those are available on our website, but specifically if someone, we did not include those in the report, otherwise it'd be about a foot thick. So this is our first attempt to really refresh the annual report from what historically has been submitted, and to maybe include some information that's relative and pertinent that hadn't been included before. But specifically, as we get into the report, obviously there's really nothing special about the table of contents other than the fact that it identifies the new areas that we are including. Some of the things that you've seen in past reports are obviously the specifics of the road and bridge and culvert conditions, some of those detailed reports of our capital improvement plan, and some of the things that we were going to do for the future. And what we've really added is kind of a brief introduction, some more details on the functions of the office, as well as some of the financials, where exactly the revenues, where they went. So moving on the introduction, really the takeaway there, other than the fact that guys in the office said I probably should update my picture from my high school graduation. The 14 years, I guess it's taken a little toll on the body, mostly the hair.
It looks a little better than Ted, though, in Hamilton County.
So the takeaway here from the introduction is, obviously we have a lot of responsibility. We have over 400 miles of road, 400 bridges, thousands of culverts. We do that on really a revenue stream that's been stagnant. The federal gas tax has not been adjusted since '93, so that's 23 years. And according to Wikipedia this morning, that time frame, we've seen a 65% increase in inflation. So we've got kind of the double whammy with one of our major revenue streams on the gas tax side of the equation, because the cost of probably more than doubled, and our revenues have been not only stagnant, but they've actually gone backwards if you include inflation. So we're kind of seeing that being pinched on both sides. So one of the things that we'll continue to support is additional revenue. On the local side, I know the state legislature has put in some provisions to allow us to do potentially some things, and so I'll be putting together some different reports and some proposals and come back in the upcoming weeks to the board, maybe in the upcoming months to the board, to talk a little bit about how we can try to combat that problem a little bit. And on the state level, it's not much better. The 28 cents that is charged at the pump hasn't been increased for back in, I think it was since '06. So we've got about 11 years of kind of flat revenue, inflationary kind of things working against us. I know it's not a very popular topic to talk about, but it's an important issue when you think about a couple of decades go by and your revenues are relatively flat or unchanged. Gets to a point where we can maximize and be as efficient as possible, but at some point in time it just gets beyond practical. So moving through the report, we got 5 major areas. We do various things that you would expect the engineer's office to do, from design and inspection and construction and maintenance and all those sorts of things. So within these tabs, I would be remiss if I didn't publicly acknowledge just what a great staff that I have. I've been, again, the county engineer since '03. The staff's moved around a little bit in terms of size and numbers, but we roughly have about a dozen people in the office, from administrative to engineers, and about 40 folks in the highway operation that do all the maintenance and plow the snow and those sorts of things. And we got a very dedicated crew, and I just can't say enough about the staff and the support that they give me, and ultimately, the citizens of Clermont County. Of all of the functions, the one area that I would say has kind of exploded, if you will, the population's been steady, so we see a steady increase in terms of folks traveling the roads. But the one area within this has been the traffic, what I would consider to be our traffic department. When I took over, we had 20 signals in all of Clermont County. We have 52 now. Of those 52, 14 are linked together in a coordinated signal computer management system within the Eastgate area. So that's one area that has completely blossomed, and there's really no stopping it. We'll continue to link the systems, and we're moving into the Milford, Miami Township area to bring those signals online, so that we have better control and management over the signals in Clermont County. So that's one area that has been pretty rapid increase. during my tenure. Revenues. We have two major revenue sources. I know the Mr. Painter, you're the new commissioner. You may be aware of this, you may not. But one of the unique things about the engineer's office is we have two dedicated sources of revenue that fund the operation. The first is the vehicle license fees, and so when folks register their cars in Clermont County, a portion of that fee, I think it's around $15, goes to specifically back to the engineer that they register. So it's important for us to make sure that folks are registering their cars in Clermont County, because those dollars come back directly to the engineer's office. And then the other major source is the state fuel tax, which is, again, 28 cents a gallon. Now, the unique thing about that fuel tax is it's divided equally amongst all 88 county engineers. So every county gets a share of that. We all got $2.34 million last year relative to fuel tax. The other categories, pretty self-explanatory. Project reimbursements. We do a lot of state and federal grants that require us to outlay the money, and then after the project's completed or during construction, we can submit for reimbursement, but it's always a reimbursement situation. So when you add all that up, we had a little over $11 million in revenue last year, which we'll start to talk about, or we'll talk a little bit later in the report, some of the specifics of where that $11 million went to. Sort of the meat and potatoes behind the report are these next couple of pages. You know, the statute requires to give an annual update on roads, bridges, and culvert conditions. So we're, again, some of this stuff is not very exciting stuff to talk about, but it's important that I understand, you know, the commitment and the efforts that have been made in the past, so that we maintain, you know, those investments moving forward.
Pat, the
Yeah.
400 miles of road, does that include the state roads as well as?
No, that's just county. That is just county county roads. You'd have you know, the township mileage are in the thousands, and then of course the state highways would be separate from that, as would the municipalities. Mm-hmm. So inside, you know, Batavia or inside Milford or Williamsburg, those would be excluded. So these are just roads that I'm responsible to maintain, you know, throughout the county. You know, the average condition, we're in pretty good shape. It's a little, some of those tabs they're a little misleading in the sense that our average age of resurfaced road is a little over 10 years, and our average condition is 65 out of 100. Those are ratings that we give ourselves after we evaluate the roads. What we're seeing is, while the surface may be fine, or, you know, a 10-year average, what we're seeing is that our roads, a lot of our roads, have a serious lack of shoulder and berm area. And while the road surface from, say, white line to white line may be in pretty good shape, there's not a whole lot of margin for error should someone venture off of the white line. And so that's something that I've made kind of a priority during my tenure. Previous to me, the county engineer kind of focused on bridges, and you'll see here in a minute that we're, you know, in pretty good shape with our bridges. We'll continue to battle of the bridges, but the area that we are seriously in need of additional revenue and additional resources, because when you get into those berm and shoulder improvements, it becomes very time consuming, but it also is very, very expensive, you know, to you know, really make those shoulder and berm improvements. Moving over to bridges, again, there's been a strong effort on bridges. I would say on an annual basis, we're probably at minimum replacing or rehabbing 8 bridges, and probably goes up maybe to 12. You know, bridges are one of those things where you just can't keep your eye off of them, because just when you think you're in pretty good shape, you'll have a storm come through and wipe out a wing wall or bridge. Just last week we had to close Round Bottom Road. That's a relatively new bridge. Not something that we were expecting to have to deal with the next couple of years, but all of a sudden you have a surprise, and that's what happened. So we will continue to be vigilant with our bridges. We have, like I said, over 400 of them. Most of them are in pretty good shape, but we have probably 25% of our bridges were built in the early 1900s or the 1930s during the WPA program. And as you would imagine, so that was the good news. The bad news is they're all built in a 10-year period of time, and so their life cycles are all going to come up about the same time. So we're trying to get out ahead of that a little bit, so that we maybe could stretch those 100 bridges over maybe a 15 or 20-year period of time, instead of trying to pack them into a 10-year period of time. So we're planning for those, even though most of them are in okay shape right now. Another 10 years and all of a sudden it's a different story. The third sort of major component of the condition is our culverts. We have a couple thousand, a little over 2,000 culverts. We have a lot of pipes that are what we rate as critical, that is they're in need of replacement. We do a lot of that just in advance of our resurfacing program. A lot of these culverts were metal pipes that maybe the bottoms are starting to rust, and they just need to be repaired and replaced before we resurface. So that's pretty self-explanatory there.
Between a bridge and a culvert?
The bridge is anything, good question. Until he's been trustee as well as commissioner. Anything over a 10-foot span. So if you have a 10-foot diameter pipe, then it's considered to be a bridge. And anything less than that is considered to be a culvert. And we take care of all of the bridges, whether they're on a township road or not. But if it's a culvert on a township road, then that's their responsibility. So we take care of all of the bridges for the county. Moving on to our capital improvements, we had a phenomenal year this year. Or last year, I should say, in 16. One of the main reasons why we wanted to kind of update this map and showcase a lot of the things that we did. I can see here that this PDF is a slightly older version I had sent, apparently. There's the road projects and the new equipment numbers are transposed here a little bit. But we had a phenomenal year on our road projects. We did just a massive amount of resurfacing in 2016. It's right in the booklet. It's wrong on the PDF. A massive amount of resurfacing in 2016. We had a nice landslide program, and then we had a couple of road improvement projects that we did that all totaled that $6.7 million. And again, we had a very strong bridge program, a little over $1 million, almost $1.4 million in bridges. And then our new equipment, we had about $600,000 in equipment. And I guess the key takeaway for the program last year was that we spent $8.8 million, but 5.5 of that, or almost 5.5, was what I like to say other people's money, state grants, federal grants, and so when you look at leveraging our dollar 62%, in my book, that's phenomenal. We were able to take our local revenues and essentially double them up. So that was in no part, or in large part, to the staff, working real hard, writing doing these grant applications and working real hard to try to find local dollars, or state and federal dollars to match up with local.
So basically, it's getting back our money that people are spending to other tax sources and bringing
Correct.
them home to Clermont County.
Correct. the dollars are out there. A lot of them, it's very competitive, especially on the state level. But the more we can bring back, it's really the only thing that's been keeping us afloat for the last, because again, our cost specifically with asphalt on resurfacing, which is a major part of our maintenance program, those costs have doubled since I've been in office, and our revenues have been flat. And then if you factor in inflation, you're really kind of getting a double whammy. So the only thing that's been able to keep us is we've been able to control our expenses and leverage our local dollars to the max.
It ultimately comes from the same place, but the taxpayers. But
exactly
understood.
Right.
But one of the things, if you touch on just a moment, is that just touch a moment how difficult it is on that landslide stabilization. I know that's a difficult project to do, and it's time consuming and also expensive.
Yeah, we have a little bit later we'll show specifically the 2 or 3 projects that we did landslide, but certainly the southern part. Well, actually, I shouldn't say the southern part. They're really all over. I mean, we have landslides in Miami Township and landslides and Ohio. It's just it's one of those things that's unique to Clermont County, and Hamilton County, I think, deals with a lot of the same issues. But it's there really is just it's an expensive process. There's really no easy way to fix these landslides. With the soil conditions that exist in Clermont County are just prone to it, especially if you get along the river basins and the valleys. But as far as the process goes, it requires a big drill rig to come in and drill down into the rock, and you reinforce it with steel and concrete, and it's just a series of drilling, a series of holes, if you will, piers, one after the next, and ends up being about about $1,000 a foot to do these sorts of things. So you can get into the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars pretty quick. So moving on into our maintenance program, again, one of the things that we it's just a necessary evil. There's been a lot of investment made in the existing system, the roadways, and one of the things that we want to do is to maintain those. So we have, in total, we have about 9 different areas specifically that we maintain, and then there's different. Again, this is an older PDF in your booklet. It has the updated numbers. So when you add up all the effort that we do maintaining, from berming to ditching to guardrail, mowing, potholes, snow removals, and all those sorts of things, it's a lot of man hours. And if you equate that back to the amount of staff that we have, it's about 70% of our time is spent maintaining the road system, which is obviously our main task. So you would expect the majority of our time to be spent on maintaining our roads and bridges and culverts and the like. So that effort is probably something that goes unnoticed in a lot of instances, but our crews are very, very dedicated, and I'm really proud of what we're able to do. We have 9 different crews, if you will, and they specialize in those areas, and they take a lot of pride, and they're very efficient at what we do. One of the things it was pretty easy. When I first started, I wanted to find out what we were good at, and I wanted to do a lot of that. And I wanted to figure out what we weren't so good at, whether it be specialized equipment or whatever, and do less of that. So it's a pretty simple kind of balance that we've been able to form, and the guys do a great job on the maintenance side of the equation. So then we'll kind of move into what we call our financials. This really outlines, where that where those revenues went. And again, I mentioned before, we had a massive resurfacing program, $4.6 million, almost 31 miles of road. We covered 18 different roads in that effort. Just to put this in perspective, a normal year is about $1 million to $1.5 million. And so we were able to go out and gain a lot of grants and a lot of outside. This is where the bulk of that $5 million came from, was in support, direct support of the resurfacing and the road program. So we're able to do, the good news is we had a big program. The bad news is if we don't have another program like this, it'll look like we're kind of taking it easy, but that's not the case. We a lot of these things move in funding cycles, and you're 2 or 3 years out, and so this was just a year where everything kind of came together. We had a lot of projects fall that we were able to do last year. So it was again, it was a really big program last year. Couple highlighting some of the road projects that we did. We completed the Branch Hill Guinea Drainage Project, which was almost $1 million, and then the Woodville Pike reconstruction project was about $1 million. And then we had our 2 landslides that, again, we were able to use a lot of state funding to get those costs down. Those 2 projects were relatively small, but still a couple $100,000 when doing those projects. Kind of honing in on the bridges. So again, we spent about $1.4 million on 13 bridges and throughout 7 townships. So there's the projects laid out, from Sharps Corner to number 9, Taylor Pike. We're pretty much all over the county. And again, we have bridges in all 14 townships. Goshen has the most. They have about 53 bridges, and Ohio has the least. I think they're around maybe 10 bridges in Ohio Township. So keeps us busy and active throughout the county. And then I wanted to put the here's another. I'll just hide this for a minute, because that's again one of the joys in sending the wrong file. But our overall program, we had about $11.2 million in total expenses. The majority of that was in our what we call payroll, administrative, $4.2 million in that. Again, we had $1.38 million in our bridge program. That's the yellow piece of the pie. And here's where the kind of the rubber meets the road on the road program. We spent a little less than $2 million, but if you remember back here, we had a $5 million program. So we only spent $2 million local, but we've got that $6 million program out of the deal. So that's where we really leveraged our money this past year. And of course, I have an annual commitment to the TID, which is $1 million. And then the next kind of biggest category was our catch-all fuel, salt, highway materials. That was about $1.5 million. So that's kind of where the money goes, if you will, into those areas. And then we move into that was a recap of the 2016 program, and then to quickly run through the 2017. We're expecting to improve 11 roads, a little over 20 miles for about $1.8 million. And again, we're using some state and federal money on that, but not near to the level that we had in previous last year, but still above our budgeted amount. If we use just straight capital and we didn't leverage it, we have about $1 million to $1.3 million set aside for road projects. So we're still bumping that up about $500,000, but it's something that we'll continue to work towards. Again, we have landslide program is unfortunately something we're just going to have to keep dealing with. We've got 3 projects on the slate for this year, about $300,000, and then again our bridge program. We've got 11 bridges slated for replacement this year throughout the county for about $1.5 million. And I'm moving through towards the end of the report. This is our partnerships. I mentioned earlier our relationship and partnership that we have with the Board of County Commissioners. That extends throughout the county. We have some great relationships with the townships and the officials, and really even in the municipality. So we work collaboratively and jointly on lots of projects, whether it be a landslide or a road or bridge project throughout the county. And our partnership that we have with the TID is, we could spend a whole lot of time just talking about that, but I know many of you commissioners, you attend the monthly meeting, you're very familiar with what we're able to do at the TID. And a lot of this report doesn't even mention all those activities, but that partnership we have is really critical and crucial to the county, and I think that the projects that we've been able to complete are pretty self-explanatory. That program has been well worth its time and effort that's put in. And then we have a little piece that Rick Crawford put together years ago on a road history that's always kind of nice, and of course we couldn't put together any kind of program or a booklet without at least acknowledging our favorite bridge in the county, which is our Stone Lake Williams covered bridge. It's our only covered bridge in the county, and then kind of wrap things up with some contact information. So it was a great year. We were able to accomplish a lot of things. We have a full slate on for this year, as well as 18 and 19. Our five-year plan is very, very busy, and with the continued support of the board, I think we can get the projects that need to be completed. Any questions?
Nice
All
job.
right, that's it. That'll be my report.
Thank you. Mr. Mauger? Tell you what, Commissioners, before we proceed, can we go ahead and maybe get a motion to accept the annual report? There's an add-on there.
I understand there was this is a recommendation of Pat Monger with the concurrence of Steve Raybold to accept the 2016 annual report, Clermont County Roads and Bridges and Culverts for the county engineer for Clermont County, Ohio, received March 31st, 2017, pursuant to Section 5543.02 of the Ohio Revised Code. I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Ubel.
Yes. Okay, we have a second presentation today with the Clermont County Department of Job and Family Services. It's an overview of the State Bill 125. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm Brenda Gilreath. I'm an assistant director in the Department of Job and Family Services, and I'm assigned to the Division of Child Support. I'd like to thank you for giving us time today on your agenda to talk about a subject that's very important to our program, Senate Bill 125. I was here just a couple of weeks ago when you proclaimed August as Child Support Program Awareness Month, and it is in fact Program Awareness Month throughout the state of Ohio. And child support professionals are reaching out to our local partners, asking them to support us in promoting this bill. We are really hoping that this year this bill gets passed. Senate Bill 125 was introduced on April 5th of 2017, and it is currently assigned to the Senate Judiciary Committee awaiting its first hearing. I have with me today my lead attorney, Teresa Ellison. She has served on the Legislative Committee for Ohio Child Support Directors Association for quite some time. So she's going to give you an overview of the bill, and she's going to talk about why this bill is so important to our program. I made packets for each one of you. You may have some of these materials, but this is in the packet, is a copy of the PowerPoint, and on the right side is a list of, it includes the bill sponsor as well as all of the co-sponsors. And behind that list is a copy of a letter that Teresa's going to talk about some more. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Teresa.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I have the task of trying to explain what Senate Bill 125 means to our department. It's very important to us. I graduated from law school in 1992, and I have been with child support since 1994. And in that period of time, the guidelines have never received a major revision. Part of the problem with that is that any changes to the guidelines themselves must go through the legislature. And because of that, and because of the somewhat controversial issues that sometimes can be included in child support, we have not been able to get a bill passed. So this year, I think we have the perfect bill that will help modernize the child support guidelines for the state of Ohio. We would like to put our support behind this bill and asking for your support as well. So I have the task of kind of giving you a high-level overview of what the bill entails and why it is so important that we try to get this passed this year. Guidelines basically mean that it's basically the methodology under which we determine how much someone will pay in child support. You've been given this brightly colored gear. We call it the gear sheet. I like it because it's sort of a striking visual, and they're the important elements of Senate Bill 125. And the bigger the gear, I think, the more important it is that that portion of the bill be passed and included. So I'm going to go over each of the gears. I also like the visual because it's sort of like a machine. If all the gears aren't working together properly and they're not included, this bill cannot work and will not be helpful to our department. So we're supporting these provisions. I would consider them all non-controversial. There is a big group of people every 4 years that work on the Child Support Guidelines Commission and make recommendations about how the guidelines should change. And it includes a number of people, including legislators, child support professionals like myself, fatherhood groups, legal aid, poverty lawyers. So they all kind of come together, and that's where these recommendations initially come from. And then, of course, they're presented to the legislature, and they draft a bill if they think that it's important enough that these changes be made. And as I've already indicated, in the entire time I've worked in child support, there's never been any major change. That is a problem. The guidelines need modernized, and I'll explain why. So I'm doing this myself. Senate Bill 125, these are the portions I'm going to try to cover as quickly as I can. The major one is the update to the economic tables. The real problem with it is obviously the time frame and the time period that's passed. The economics behind the tables themselves rely on data from the 1980s. Clearly, although I remember the 80s, it's a long time ago, and the economics clearly have changed in the last 35 years. The other thing it includes, which is very important, is a parenting time adjustment. So the legislature changed the terminology in the statute from visitation, which is probably what you're familiar with hearing, to parenting time. I like that because I know as a co-parent, my kids are never visiting with their dad. He's providing parenting time, and I think it's the same for parents who obviously are no longer together. The father or mothers, they're not visiting with their children, they're providing parenting. So what this does is allows the court to make adjustments to child support based on the amount of parenting time a non-custodial parent might have with their child. That is not included in the guidelines now, and I think it's super important. And so did the child professionals that drafted this bill. The third one is the most difficult for us to manage and administer. It's cash medical and health care coverage. What cash medical is the amount of monetary support a non-custodial parent pays monthly when there's no health insurance coverage, private health insurance coverage for a child. The problem with cash medical is it was drafted in a very complicated way in 2007. It's difficult to administer, and we would love to see that change so it simplifies not only for us but for our clients and constituents. The fourth area I'm going to cover is multiple family orders. The way that the guidelines are drafted right now does not adequately deal with the fact that people have multiple families. So we see that very often. And the way it's drafted right now, the first child of the families gets the most money. It's not really fair, it's not really appropriate. So what this bill will do is modernize that, change it, and make it more fair. So I'll talk about that. Child care credit is the last one, really. Right now, there's no cap on the amount of child care credit you can receive in the child support guidelines. Sometimes it's way out of whack compared to the amount of earnings someone has or the amount of time someone's away from their child for school or work. And so this puts a cap on it based on either the age of the child or income levels. So this is a long needed change as well. Right now it's not available to us. If someone says they earn $10,000 and they spend $8,000 in childcare, we have to give it to them. So that'll modify that. And my favorite part of the bill is that it would modify and update the guidelines themselves, so the worksheet itself from the revised code to the administrative code. And what that means is that future changes would not have to go through the legislature. They would be done by rule by the state office themselves, and it requires a 5-year review. So every 5 years they would have to look at the guidelines for possible changes and make recommended rule changes. Much easier to modify the guidelines going forward, which is what we really need. Okay, so the first one is the economic tables. I kind of went over this briefly. The current tables that have been in use since 1992. What Ohio uses, so every state has a different child support guideline methodology. So every state can use whatever they want. It just has to be passed. It just has to go through either your legislature or your child support office. We use the Betson-Rothbarth system. And we also use what's called an income shares model. So what that means is we take the gross income of the parents and we look at the chart to determine what their percentage of that gross income is. They pay that percentage of child support based on the guidelines annually. It's kind of a mouthful, I know. But the important part about Betson-Rothbarth 1 is that it's old. Right now, there's a methodology out there for Betson-Rothbarth 4, which is clearly several steps away from what we're currently using. I found out last week that we're one of only 3 states that still uses this methodology. It's very old. It uses economic data from the early mid-90s or mid-80s, long time ago. And our tables max out at a gross income for the parties of $150,000, which in the mid-80s would have been a substantial amount of income for parties to earn. Now, it's not the case. We see a lot of joint incomes that reach that $150,000 mark. And also the really important thing for us as well is the self-sufficiency reserve is virtually non-existent. So what that is to maintain a certain amount of income in a household for our low-income obligors who really owe the majority of the child support, not only in Ohio, but nationwide. So what will Senate Bill 125 do to those economic tables? They will change it from, as I've already indicated, to the methodology from 1 to 4. So the economic data we'd be relying on would not be from the 80s anymore. It would be from 2015, clearly a lot more up to date. The table maximum would go up to $300,000 joint income, which is obviously more in keeping with the times and what people are traditionally earning today. The self-sufficiency reserve, we need one that actually works. So the goal here is to encourage our low-income obligors to pay frequently and reliably. So if we give them a self-sufficiency reserve, which means that they have enough money in their household that when the kids come to see them, they can do some things with their kids or even maintain a separate household, then they will also be able to pay their child support. The federal Child Support Office came out with regulations that were adopted in January, and it requires every state to have a self-sufficiency reserve. It's a real push from the federal government. They call it right-sizing orders. It's my understanding that the current tables, even though they're old, they didn't really account very well for those low-income obligors. So the orders for them are completely too high, even at the rate they are now. So what the new table would do is give them a little bit more money to maintain a household, which is what we would like to see, because even low-income obligors, they want to pay their child support regularly, but if it means they can't pay their bills and they have to just, it's difficult. And so hopefully they wouldn't have to make that choice anymore. They can both maintain a household and pay regular child support, which helps everyone. Okay, so the next change would be the parenting time adjustment. Currently, there is no parenting time adjustment in our tables. So what that means is it assumes that the entire cost of raising the child shifts to the custodial parent's home. We all know that's not true. That both parents have to maintain a household and they both have to have income available to them when the children visit. So right now it's very inconsistent across the state of Ohio. Some courts will make adjustments for parenting time. The problem is that the law as it's drafted now doesn't require it. So you could have 1 day a week with your children or 4 days a week with your children. We're not required to give you an adjustment for that. You may still be ordered to pay the full amount of your child support. So what I like about this bill, and of course it's been controversial over the years, how do you make adjustments for that? This, I think, is very non-controversial and would work really well. It allows for two different types of adjustment. The first would be if you have a standard parenting order, you would get a 10% adjustment from your child support obligation, and it's automatically calculated within the worksheet. So a standard order is usually 1 night a week and every other weekend, just sort of as a rule. So then if you have that kind of parenting time, you get 10% off your child support. If you have 40% or more parenting time, then the courts are required to look at deviation. And if they decide not to deviate, not to make your child support lower, they must make specific findings of fact and conclusions of law. That is not the case now. I do like that, so it requires the court to take a look at it. A lot of times I find that if children are really spending an equal amount of time with their families, the parents already kind of know that and they make these agreements and adjustments themselves. But what this does is require the courts to do so. So that's been needed for a much long period of time. The next one is cash medical. Currently, it is a big challenge for our families, courts, private bars, and CSEAs. So what I indicated before is cash medical is the amount that a non-custodial parent would pay when there is no private health insurance for the children. So what we run into a lot are families that are on the medical card, so the children get Medicaid. If the father makes more than $18,000 a year, he would be required to pay a monthly cash medical amount. If the mother's not on the medical card, it goes to her or the custodial parent to offset her costs. If it's a Medicaid situation, it is assigned or given to the state for reimbursement for the Medicaid that's in the household. So that in itself is a fine idea, except for that the way it was drafted in 2007 makes it really hard to administer. So what happens first of all is there's no real definition of what that cash medical support should cover. So people get into arguments about that. It's on and off. So if you have private health insurance, you're not charged the cash medical. We have to rely on our clients and constituents to call us and tell us they no longer have health insurance. When that's the case, then we start charging cash medical support. And on top of that, there's a different child support amount that's charged. So just from that brief description, I hope you understand how difficult that can be. I had a case last week where the woman had not had private health insurance. She was the one who was required to provide it for over 4 years. By the time we found out about it, we had to go backdate cash medical support for 4 years. So obligor was not very happy about that. Luckily, that's not the rule, but clearly it can happen, and it's a problem. So we're hoping that cash medical with this bill will go away in the method under which it is now currently treated. It'll be much easier for everyone to both administer and for parties to understand. People get very confused when you try to explain this to them. And I'm a child support professional, and I sometimes have a hard time. So, also, the health insurance marginal credit that we currently give parties on the worksheet doesn't even begin to reflect what they actually pay. So it's really not fair. In addition, with the Affordable Care Act, as you are probably well aware, there are penalties for parents who don't provide health insurance for their children. Currently, the IRS says that if you get the tax dependency exemption and you do not have health insurance, you pay the penalty. Under Ohio domestic law, either party can be ordered to provide the health insurance. So you do have situations where the non-custodial parent is ordered to provide the health insurance, but the custodial parent has the tax credit. She has very little control over whether that person has health insurance. If that person should drop it and she doesn't have it at the time she goes to file her taxes, she could potentially be penalized for that. So it doesn't work very well. The new law would sort of account for that and put us more in tune with the federal law, which is what we're hoping. So what would cash medical support do? Under Senate Bill 125, it establishes a single obligation that's always charging, which is assessed to both parties and which is calculated using available current medical support data. So it takes everything that's really complicated about cash medical and makes it easier to implement and understand. Also, there'll be a rebuttable presumption that the custodial parent will cover the health insurance. And that stays with the parent who has the tax exemption. So that sort of helps in a situation. So you have both the person who's required to provide the health insurance, potentially responsible for the penalty, which we don't have right now. And the calculation for the credit for health insurance will now include their total out-of-pocket cost. So it recognizes now that that's how much you have to spend in total to provide health insurance, and it's not available to you from which to pay child support. So all this is a lot more fair, a lot easier to understand, and better for us implementing it as a child support agency. Multiple family orders have always been a problem because the first child gets the largest chunk of money, the way it's calculated right now. And if a person has other children, so this is what happens, I'll just use the mom and dad example. If dad is paying for a child in mom's home and she also has 2 other children, she would get credit for those 2 other children. If the father of those 2 other children pays child support, then they take that off the credit. If he doesn't, then the mom gets the full 100% credit for that, which ends up being that the father of the other child subsidizes those 2 children. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but basically that's what, in the end, the father who is not the father of the children on the of the mother that are not on the worksheet subsidizes those kids. It's really kind of hard to explain, but it's not fair, basically. It's not fair. And it's inconsistent treatment of child support paid. So what we have to give credit for on our worksheet is what the obligors pay in child support. The problem with that is sometimes they don't pay, but they're ordered to pay a certain amount. So you have some courts that give them the amount they're actually ordered to pay, and you have some courts give them credit for the amount they actually paid. So you have inconsistent results across the state. We always go with ordered to be paid in our county because if it's not really fair to the next child if you don't include, or even to that child if you don't include the complete amount he's actually ordered to pay. Plus it's hard to keep track. One year does he pay half of his order, and the next year he pays 3/4 of his order, and the next year does he pay all of his order, so it becomes difficult. So what I like about Senate Bill 125 is they've come up with a deduction methodology which will treat every child the same and will give a consistent deduction for each child. So basically you take the total number of children between the parties, both the ones that they have together and the ones they have separate, and you come up with one deduction amount based on all those kids for each side, and they're all treated the same. So then I don't have to worry about what did they pay last year, what were they ordered to pay for those other children. It's just more consistent overall. Once again, very non-controversial. Everybody thinks this is a good idea. Everybody thinks this is more fair. It shouldn't be that the first child of these parties gets the most money, and by the time you get down to the 5th child, they get the least amount. It's just not fair. So if you understand nothing else about what I said in this kind of complicated child support guideline overview, it's just more fair, non-controversial. The child care credit I touched on briefly. The current methodology has no cap for child care. It's not divided out by the age of the child. and there's no cap on the income shares amount. Nothing affects your child support more than the child support credit. So if you say you have a couple, the father earns 60% of the income, the mother earns 40%, she spends $10,000 a year on child care, he will pay 60% of that, or $6,000 a year, and that's added dollar for dollar to his child support obligation. So nothing affects child support more than the child support credit. That's why it needs to be capped, because sometimes the amount is unfair and the amount spent is unreasonable. But we are not allowed to tell people, well, that's unreasonable. We have to say that's fine. What I like about Senate Bill 125 is that the cap amounts that they came up with are determined using the highest price alternative under the Ohio Office of Children and Families Market Study. So we're not really restricting what child care the parents can choose. The deduction amounts that are allowable go up to the highest market value price. So that's a good thing, but the cap helps us out. It's divided out by age group, so I think it's like childbirth to 18 months, 18 months to 3 years, 3 to 6, 6 to 12. So it caps it out based on the age of the child. And additional cap, which I like too, for the low-income obligors, limits their contribution to no more than 50%. That way, once again, they have income in their home to support their families and to pay their child support. If they move it to the OAC, which is the Ohio Administrative Code, those are all the rules under which our agency is governed and dictates every move we make, that it would be go under the rule process, which requires every year that the Department of Job and Families, every 5 years, that they look at the rule and determine whether changes should be made. And that goes out across the state for comments from anyone and suggestions. You know how the rulemaking process works, I'm sure. So we're hopeful that that's the case. There's several reasons why I think the bill is important. Obviously, the guidelines need to be updated. They need to be modernized. This bill was very carefully drafted. It includes all the major points that we were hoping that it would cover. It's non-controversial. There's been very little backlash from most groups regarding the bill, which helps it when you get to the legislature. I have drafted a letter that we would like to send to Senator Eaker and to our representatives, which just mentions that on behalf of Clermont County Child Support and child support professionals across the state, that we think that this is a very excellently drafted bill, much needed, and needs to pass. It's a real grassroots effort right now to try to get this bill passed because it's hard to get these things going. And we're not asking for any more money either. There's no more money that needs to be, there's no more money that's needed to get this implemented. All these things can easily be implemented, from very few changes in software and that kind of thing. So we appreciate your time. Thanks for listening to me talk about this, and we appreciate your support in getting this bill passed.
So Teresa, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the letter you gave us was August 2nd.
Yes.
So I guess this has already gone out.
No.
It has not.
We did not, I'm sorry, we did not, we wanted to make sure we had the backing and the support of the commissioners before we sent it out.
Okay.
I did draft it on that day, but we haven't sent it out yet. You have any other questions?
Making the rules administrative rather than legislative
Mm-hmm.
still allows JCAR, the legislative team, to come back and look at the rules and decide if they're appropriate or not. So the legislature still has a part in the process.
That's
even
true,
though
through
it's
JCAR.
administrative.
That's true.
JCAR.
And they'll have public hearings and opportunity for parties and interested parties to come forward. And
Right.
yes, so it does. It
So
does.
it stays somewhat legislative, it's just not as truly legislative
Right.
as it currently is.
Yeah, it wouldn't need a new bill.
No, it wouldn't
to
require-
legislative, yeah, but
Exactly.
it would be involved in JCAR. That's
Yep.
true. That's very true. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
If the board would entertain a motion to that effect that support that letter, or we can note it in the minutes. Either way. We want to make sure that we do that.
I think we
You
covered an awful lot of
prepared to do
material.
that?
and
I'd like to see the cons on it, wouldn't you?
Do
Before-
what?
was
before
due
we
to be
support it, I'd
today.
like to see the other side of it.
Actually, Tom, I think as Commissioner Painter said, we'd like to kind of, this is the first time we've seen Senate Bill 125 and see if there's an opposite opposing side. But till we can get something back pretty quickly. Brenda and Teresa, yeah. Thanks for the presentation. I guess the Senate won't be back in session for a little while, so we've got time.
Thank you.
So we won't take too long. Yeah, thanks. You want to take care of following up on that?
Yeah, well.
Okay, Commissioners, we have in front of us the consent agenda, which we were presented with the end of last week. If there are no questions, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed on our regular session of August 16th, 2017.
I reviewed the consent agenda and have no items that I wish to bring forward for further discussion, so I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as prepared.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Uble?
Yes. And moving over to page 6, the non-consent agenda, the first item, 14, is Resolution 126-17 to pay our bills in the amount of $1,306,117.18. Can we get a motion for item 14?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye?
Mr. Uble?
Yes. Item 15.
Hi, Lyle.
Lyle?
Morning.
Morning. I'm Lyle Bloom, Director with the Clermont County Water Resources Department. And item number 15 is a recommendation to adopt resolution number 127-17, resolving to declare the necessity to construct improvements to the Clermont County wastewater system. This is for project number 6402-60116 and 6402-60117, consisting of constructing, maintaining, and operating the Newtonsville Collection System Assessment Project and the Newtonsville Wastewater Treatment Plant Project, respectively, located within the village of Newtonsville and Wayne Township. And this is more particularly described in the detailed plans, specifications, estimates of cost and financing, and tentative assessments, which were on file in the office of the Clermont County Water Resource Department at 4400 Haskell Lane, Batavia, where they may be examined by all persons interested, and to authorize the clerk of the board to place a legal notice in a newspaper of general circulation for 2 consecutive weeks, beginning on August 24th, 2017, to publish the date, time, and place designated by the Board of County Commissioners where endorsements of and or objections to the construction and financing of the proposed improvements will be heard pursuant to Chapter 6117 of the Ohio Revised Code. And the public hearing is scheduled to be held at 7:00 p.m. local time on Monday, September 25th, 2017 at the Pattison Park Lodge located at 2228 US 50 Batavia. And the notice will also be posted on the county's website. So this is the second resolution as a part of this project. The first resolution ratified detailed plans and specs that was adopted by the board on July 19th. This resolution, of course, schedules the public hearing. If approved, we'll also send out by certified mail to all the affected properties notice of the public hearing. And then the public hearing, of course, is scheduled for September 25th. If residents or property owners cannot attend the public hearing, it also stays open for 5 days where they can submit in writing any support or opposition to the project. Questions?
No.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion then for Resolution 127-17 as referenced in item 15.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Uble?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lon. Mr. Eigel, item 16.
Item 16 is Commissioner Yule's travel to Washington, D.C. for 2 days, and this is for the Ohio County Commissioners White House Conference. The total cost is estimated not to exceed $847.10.
Can we get a motion then for item 16?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Ubel?
Abstained. Item 17.
And item 17 is Commissioner Painter's travel to Washington, D.C. for 3 days, and this is for the same Ohio County Commissioners White House Conference. The total cost is estimated not to exceed $1,260.
I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Abstain.
And Suki Sheets, item 18.
Good morning. Financials for this week, we have a few supplementals. First in the Park District Fund and their overtime, $1,500. They've had some added overtime this year that wasn't planned for originally. They have the Charlo Lock and Dam Improvement Fund, an additional $357.16 in other expenses. They have some more efforts that have to go on down there. And then finally, they are establishing a brand new capital project fund. It's the Clermont County Park District Capital Project Fund. They're going to appropriate $400,000 in there. This will be a fund they'll move money into out of their operating funds in order to maintain, kind of like we do with our capital fund, funds available to do the longer term capital projects.
This is kind of a one-time thing. They're not planning to do 400 a year, or?
Well, actually, they're appropriating 400 right now, which is their estimate for this year. They'll appropriate this one then every year from this point forward.
We get a motion then for the supplemental appropriations as referenced in item 18.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes. We also currently have need for the executive session pursuant to section 121-22G2 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or the sale of property at competitive bidding. Can we get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes. We will be back shortly. Okay, we are back from executive session. No decisions were made or votes taken. We are at the public participation portion. Is there any public that would like to present? Yes, sir. Would you like to come up to the podium? State your name. You'll have a period of 10 minutes maximum.
Start my stopwatch here. I'm Chris Hicks, 444 Woodward Court, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45255. I thank you for recognizing my right as a citizen to speak at the public participation portion of this meeting. On July 26th, that right was denied, and I was forcibly removed by Mr. Ubel, who has left the room, and a deputy sheriff, when I was the only person in the room. That was chilling, and I hope you consider how many citizens those type of behaviors intimidate for fear of retribution for trying to exercise their fundamental rights. In our county, even elected officials fear retribution. Mr. Ubel can control their fate as head of the Republican Party. As an example, Representative Becker questioned and opposed Ubel's tax scheme and spoke. He now faces a primary challenge and seems to have gone silent. Others in office fear a similar fate. Your public participation rules on your website are in conflict with US 42 U.S. Code 1983 and the Ohio AG's Yellow Book, page 98, footnote 968. Nevertheless, I appreciate that under Rule 3.4, you have allowed me 10 minutes versus 5 minutes as a topic of exceptional interest, so let me begin. I appreciate also being able to use the video equipment here in the room. So I'm going to direct to some charts up on the wall and take you through a brief presentation. Where we are. What I've put up is slimy things that I think have happened in our county in the last 5 months. We should be ashamed of these. Slipping a tax increase into the state budget in the cover of night with a lobbyist and secret from the elected officials in the affected area. Mr. Ubel offering meetings he won't have. Mr. Ubel threatening to get a hotel manager fired. Mr. Ubel calling a Republican executive committee meeting to come after me for disagreeing with his tax plan, me being prohibited from speaking on 726, Mrs. Fraley and Mr. Tilbury being on a board without transparency that receives and spends $700,000 a year from their office, Mr. Ubel and Mr. Kupta refusing to answer yes or no about a trip to Atlanta in mid-2016 paid for by a third party. I put at the bottom of this chart, our character is defined by how we respond when we have done something we should have done differently. I wish Mr. Ubel was here to hear this. Our character is defined by what we do when we have done something we should have done differently. I had somebody on Monday say to me, Chris, you're an army of one. I put 2 questions on this page. What does that say about me? I'm willing to stand up here and talk that transparency, that lack of backroom deals, is the principles we should stand for in our government and in the party that I'm part of and you're all part of. But I think more important is question 2. What does that say about us? What does that say about you, gentlemen? I shouldn't be an army of one fighting for transparency. I shouldn't be an army of one fighting to end backroom deals. I put 2 pictures here that I've shared before of a wall in a parking garage in Washington, D.C. One has Andrew Jackson, who said, "One man with courage makes a majority." The other one says, from George Washington, "It's better to be alone than in bad company." On 8/20/2012, this commission, with slightly different members, took over our CVB board. They replaced 5 members at one time with government cronies and a business associate of Mr. Ubel. That caused there to be an instant majority. And there was no longer representation of the business community in a meaningful way on this board. What's interesting to notice about that is Mr. Humphrey voted for it, Mr. Ubel voted for it, Mr. Proud, commissioner at that time, wasn't present. Mr. Ubel in this voted to put himself on the CVB board. I think it was refreshing that he abstained from approving his own travel expense just a little bit earlier in this meeting, and he should have abstained here. This vote should not have happened without Mr. Proud present and when one of the commissioners was involved in the appointment. Our CVB board today, that is supposedly an independent business league that gets special rights as a 501c6, does not have a single member of business on its board. Not a single member of business on its board. Unless, of course, you count Chris Ham, who's the head of a bankrupt recycling company in Milford that I don't understand how it goes with tourism. Okay, but Chris Ham is also the head of the Port Authority board, and he's on the library board. He's an amazing volunteer on things that are funded by the taxpayers. But if you look at this board, you see Ms. Fraley, the auditor. Auditors are not supposed to be on boards that receive money from their office. That's on the Ohio AG's website. I've pointed it out again and again. Mr. Tilbury, her associate, is on the board as well. Mr. Ubel and Adele Evans, all county people. Let's keep going. I think there's a few things that I want to put forward that need to happen. They need to happen now. They don't need to happen in next year sometime. They need to happen now. Step 1, I put triage. You guys have the power, and you have some upcoming appointments, to flip our CVB back to what it's supposed to be, a business league. A business league. We should get rid of all the crony government people. We should get rid of associates of Mr. Ubel on that board, and to the fullest extent of the bylaws, the 5 appointments you have in the current bylaws, replace them with business people. I put on the right side of the chart I have here a list of 14 entities. I'll be glad to help go get people from those entities that are legitimate business, tourism-related entities in our county to be on the CVB board. I hear that it's hard to get people to participate. That is nuts when there is $700,000 a year in money coming through this board that those people direct the spending of. So let's go to step 2, trust. Linda Fraley should have already resigned from this board. Linda Fraley should have already resigned from this board. Her office distributes $700,000 a year, $692,000 in 2016, to this board. Chuck Tilbury should also be off the board. I'm going to keep going here. I put step 2B, trust. There was a secret trip, not reported on ethics disclosures, that Mr. Ubel and Andy Kupta participated in. I just found out today, I now have the itinerary for that trip. who was involved, and it prominently lists their government titles. I know from Bob Proud it was not paid for by the government. I still don't know who it was paid for. My dates were a little wrong. It took place on September 1st. It should have been public. This is a backroom swamp thing. They need to be speaking out front. They need to not leave the room when somebody's talking. Step 3, accountability. Let's do what's right. Mr. Ubel has done a lot of things. Promised to meet with everyone, called an executive committee meeting to try to address me, threatened a hotel manager. It's time to get ahead of that stuff. I would ask that today or at the next meeting, Mr. Ubel come to this podium and explain himself. I also think it is past time to take off hats. Mr. Ubel, as president of the commission, he should not be in leadership of the Republican Party. He should not be on the CVB board. That is wrong, and he has used those rules to try to come after people like me. Like me. All right, so let me wrap up here. And I'm at 8 minutes. I've used 8 minutes of the 10 minutes. I've laid out 3 simple steps that would have an amazing impact on our future. This could be a defining moment for the future of our county. It's a defining moment in leadership. I once heard somebody say, and I love this quote, "You make the meaning of the past by what you do today and tomorrow." You make the meaning of the past by what you do today and tomorrow. It's time to swallow pride and ego. It's time to be patriots, not politicians. And it's time to put the citizens first, not yourselves. You're supposed to be servants of the citizens, not doing backroom deals that you believe in your mind is great. So with what's left of my time, which is a minute and a half, I just want to close with a few key comments. I don't know if it can be today. I wish it could be today that Mr. Ubel would come to this podium and explain himself. But now I finally got, and I want to thank the staff here for finally got the emails to open. I appreciate it. And by just dumb luck, the first email of Mr. Ubel's that I'd done in a records request a month ago had the itinerary of the secret trip on it. On September 1st to Atlanta, private jet from Lunken Airport. It's true. It's time for this to be addressed. This was a swamp backroom deal. There's a lot of things that need to be answered for. This is probably an Ohio Ethics Commission violation, and now they will, I'm sure, open an investigation as a result of this. This is the piece of evidence they asked me for. So that is a little bit less than 10 minutes. I appreciate the time to speak, and again, I think it would be fantastic for you, Mr. Ubel, to come here right now and explain these things and what you're going to do about them.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a recess while the minutes are prepared. All right, David. Oh, you're back from the recess. The minutes were prepared, and we've had a chance to review the minutes.
I'd like to acknowledge that a past employee of Clermont County passed away recently, Ray Sebastian, at age 68, and the visitations at Evans Funeral Home in Milford on Friday, August the 18th at 10 o'clock. Ray was a longtime employee here, retired in 2011, was quite a good person in the building department, served on a number of state committees in it to represent Clermont County and others. So Ray was a good guy.
He's only 67 years young, so.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his friends.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the minutes from August 16th, 2017?
I'll make a motion with that addition to them to approve the minutes of August the 16th, 2017.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes. Anything else? We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes. Thank you for coming. See you next week.